All right, we're recording. Okay, so hi Abby. I am so stoked that you and I get to have a chat. So Abby Dunkin is a phenomenal athlete, and I am going to introduce you because I know you, but not everyone will. So there's this moment where I go through all of your accolades, which I love. So in 2015, Abby Dunkin won a gold medal for the Paralympic American Games. 2016 Paralympics gold medal. 2019 women's U25 wheelchair basketball world champion. Starter in 2019. I have snippets that we'll watch of that particular game. And I just, Abby and I are connected through an organization called Athlete Ally. I'm a board member, and Abby is one of our phenomenal, fierce ambassadors, which is, it's so cool to have you, Abby.
I'm super excited.
Cool. I'm in the middle of nowhere next to a dirt road, and the big trucks are coming and flattening the dirt because we have mudslides. So that's what that sound was. So Abby, I thought that you could start with telling folks just a little bit about how you got started playing wheelchair basketball. So I know your arc, but these folks who are going to be watching it don't.
So I grew up, I played soccer when I was a kid, I played basketball, I did all the sports, the whole 9 yards. When I was in middle school, I had torn my meniscus. Actually, I used to be a secondary black belt martial arts, and I did MMA and all that.
I read that. And I was like, that's amazing.
So yeah, I actually tore my meniscus that way. And so I had surgery when I was like 6th grade, maybe 11, 12 years old. And so after the surgery, I still had the pain and didn't know what spread from my left knee to my right knee and then both my legs. And I had developed what was called CRPS, or complex regional pain syndrome. And so it's basically like if you break your ankle, obviously that's going to hurt, and your brain's going to tell you, hey, you're in pain, you're in pain, you're in pain, because there's an injury. Well, once that injury heals with CRPS, the brain keeps sending the signals for no reason. And so
do they know why it sends the signals, or?
No, it usually happens from like surgery, stress, or an injury, or something had to happen. And so mine was surgery. And so like my leg would change different colors, turn different temperatures, it would swell. I couldn't be in water for the longest time, and it was just whole fiasco. But I was able to manage my pain on my own because I want to stay away from the prescription drugs and all the side effects and procedures. So I managed it through just physical exercise as best as I could. And coming up into my junior year of high school in 2012, 2013-ish, the pain just got really bad to where I needed to do something. I couldn't take it any longer. Like I remember I was on the varsity basketball team, and we were at a away tournament, and I was in the locker room bawling my eyes out because my uniform hurt so bad just to wear from the nerve pain.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I have to do something. And so I went and sought out my first doctor with the prescription medication for nerve pain. And after about a week of taking it, my mom found me in the corner of a kitchen. She thought I was having a stroke from all the side effects. I was drooling, my eyes were glassed over, and it was pretty bad. And so January 2013, I went in for 2 lumbar nerve blocks. And it didn't go as planned.
Tell us what that surgery is.
Yeah, so a lumbar nerve block is basically they take this anesthetic and they just inject it. You can do it in your neck or your lower back, and it's supposed to help with chronic pain. But there are also risks that come with that. And so I had 2 of them done at the same time, or right after each other. And on the right side, it just did not go as planned. Needless to say, and during that, my whole body pretty much came off the table in a full body muscle spasm, and they had to bring nurses to hold me down. I'm like, okay, let's do it again. And
were you you're not conscious? This is you are.
Yeah. They gave me a little bit of some type of drug, but I was fully conscious, so I remember everything. And then I remember coming in the waiting room for my mom to come get me, and I was a little groggy, but I knew what was going on.
Mm.
And I'm thinking something did not go right, like something happened. And so for about a month, I actually walked with a limp on my right side.
Mm.
And I went to, at this time, so I'm from New Braunfels, Texas, and so close to San Antonio and Austin.
Yeah.
And I went to a San Antonio Spurs basketball game.
Right.
And I had met a man who heard my story somehow and offered to get me into MD Anderson Cancer Hospital in Houston to see a neurologist. Turns out the guy that I met is the owner of a big Texas chain called Whataburger. And so he's able to get me in and saw a neurologist there. And also pull back just a little bit. About a month after the nerve block, I went to actually up here in DFW, Texas, for a treatment called CalMare. And at the time was pretty brand new. And they take electrodes and they put them on the outskirts of your pain. So for me, it was like my neck, my arms, my upper back. And you're hooked up to this machine, and it's supposed to help scramble the pain messages that are sent.
Yeah, so they used that when we were, when I was swimming, it's like something that they used like when our shoulders would get fucked up.
Yeah, it's similar to a TENS unit.
That's right. Yeah. And then the only other thing that they used to do, which they don't do, is they used to, because I have slight back problems, and they would insert like cortisone shots straight into your back so that it would just numb the whole thing so that we could just like get jumped back into the water, none of which is best practice for sports anymore. When I was coming up, like that was the kind of like crazy shit that they did, where they were just like, oh, you're in, the pain. And the thing that I didn't tell you is that I have Ehlers-Danlos, which is
oh, really?
Yeah, totally. And
wow.
So I have chronic pain, not to the degree that you do, but I think that sometimes people don't fully grasp what it means to be in constant physical pain.
Yeah.
And how kind of extraordinary it is that you as a young person decided to try and manage that pain on your own, which, of course, physical activity is one. It also helps the mind, the mood, all that kind of stuff, which is what they always tell me to do. But I have to meet a threshold of pain in order for it to start alleviating some of the pain. So that's, yeah. Okay. So you are now I realized I didn't share that with you. So I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I also realized as we were chatting that a lot of people don't understand what it means to like hold chronic pain in your body all the time. Like what it means
It's
to actually.
one of the most exhausting, physically exhausting, mentally exhausting, emotionally exhausting. Every aspect of your life when it comes to yourself personally, mentally, physically, emotionally, to all your relationships with family, friends, school, work, whatever. It impacts everything you do.
Yeah.
But that was one of the biggest challenges that I had with it.
Okay, so you're in DFW. You've had a couple nerve blocks. You're like, something did not go right.
Yes. So this is probably end of February 2013. It was about 2 weeks after I just played my last varsity game my junior year. At that time, I had just been named captain for the next year, so I was super excited. And the CalMare treatment was supposed to be like this, oh, like you're cured, you're going to be back to normal, everything's going to be great. So I was really looking forward to it. And I get there and I have my evaluation the first day, and he tells me 3 things. I only saw him twice throughout this 2-week period, which should have been a red flag from the beginning. He said, you can never drink caffeine, you can never get tattoos, and you can never play basketball again if you really care about yourself and your health. Now I have like 6 tattoos.
I know. I was like, you have tattoos.
Oh yeah. Once you get one, it's addicting. And so I was like, this is like, that just drained me. Like, am I, like, is this really going to be my life now? And so I was hooked up to the machine for about an hour a day for 2 days, or an hour a day, 5 days a week for 2 weeks. In the first week, I just felt really tired. I got sick,
Yeah.
and something just wasn't clicking right. And I guess the way I was feeling it isn't the way that you're supposed to feel it as a sign that it's working. And so the next week, I actually lost 30 pounds. I got
In those two
really sick.
weeks.
I was like a twig. And so throughout this process, I kept an account on like a Caring Bridge type website because at this point it was like a new treatment. So people in the chronic pain world wanted to know like what this treatment was about and kind of list like my day-to-day journal type things. And one day I got up to get out of bed in the morning and I just fell over and my legs got super tight and I couldn't walk. And I had no idea what was going on. My mom had no idea what was going on. We asked to see a doctor. A doctor did not come in to see me. And we got a call from some random medical facility, I don't even remember where, saying, "Hey, is this your doctor?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Is this the nurse that's been doing it on you?" "Oh, yeah." And the doctor said, "You know what? Here's my nurse. She's going to do this entire thing for you." Never saw him again. And the medical practice said, "Hey, well, we've had patients come out of there in wheelchairs. Like, you need to be really, really careful." And we're thinking, what? Like, we just paid a good bit of money up for this treatment up front. And now I'm here and I can't walk. And so the nurse that was doing it wasn't actually a nurse. Turns out she was just an office assistant. I don't know if she was certified in the Calmer treatment specifically, and so I left about 2 days early and I couldn't walk and borrowed a friend's wheelchair that belonged to her grandma for a few weeks. And a little bit after that is when I got into the MD Anderson Cancer Hospital to see a neurologist.
Yeah.
And throughout those 2 weeks, like I used a wheelchair at school and everything, and it was like this whole new world, and I didn't know why things weren't working the way they did before I left.
Right.
And so we got down to Houston, and the doctor, I remember he looked at me. Well, I asked him, I was like, "I'm just borrowing this wheelchair. Like, when do you think I could give this back, or do I need to get my own?
Right.
Like, what is your prognosis?" And he kind of looked at me, looked at the floor, looked at my mom, and his face kind of dropped. He's like, "You probably just need to get your own at this point."
Is that what you were expecting him to say?
Not at all. Like, I was ready to get up. I remember local newspapers did an article over me and ready for me to get back on 2 feet, get ready for the next season, everything like that. And so I'm thinking, oh shit, like is this really how it's gonna go? And I'm about to go my senior year of high school, um, and so I realized at that point in high school I had let sports become my identity and who I was, and it defined me.
Mm.
And I think in that moment, when you get stripped of what you let define you, then what else are you?
Right.
And so it was one of those moments like, oh shit. And then I just felt like a burden, not because I didn't love myself, but because I loved people that were around me too much to let them feel that burden. And so with all the prescription medication I was on and all the side effects, and I couldn't my teachers in high school thought I was just smoking dope and on all these bunch of drugs, and because I was out of it completely. I don't remember anything. Like, I don't remember taking my SATs twice. I don't remember how I got there. I don't remember anything.
Well, because at this point, there are a couple things that happen. You've potentially developed some sort of opioid habit, which I'm a former addict. I quit when I was 20, but like so that is possibly happening. You also have just been told that you now are going to have to own your own wheelchair because this is your life from here on out. And you're also 17 going into your senior year of high school. Like, any of those things on their own would be a like life altering, changing, devastating, phenomenal, overwhelming experiences. And you got 3 of them all at once. So, yeah, so you're totally out of it. It's high school. You're now in a wheelchair and you're like, what the fuck? Like, how does this work?
And I was still in the closet at that time, so I'm
Oh,
so stressed with all of that. But I mean, it all played out. But at the time, it just felt like everything was just coming in at once.
So you're closeted. You're like, it's cool. Don't mind this wheelchair that maybe I don't know how to make work? Because did you have like a small one or like a big one, or were you
At
still
first,
like
I had, like, a
hard
hospital
looking?
chair type thing, and so, like, at the time I was using this hospital chair, I had, my math teacher from 5th grade had, like, this 5K because she had recently got diagnosed with cancer, and so we did, like, this kind of relay. So I went in this hospital chair to do laps around, and this is before my appointment with MD Anderson, so I go in, my arms are so bruised. He's thinking, like, "Do I need to call CPS?" Like, I'm like,
So
"No."
my dad had Parkinson's and we had him in a wheelchair. He's now passed, but he spent the last few years of his life in a wheelchair that he totally rejected for a bunch of different reasons, patriarchy, 1950s, masculinity, all that stuff, right? But for anyone who doesn't fully grasp like how heavy these things are, they're like impossible to maneuver. They're super clunky. They're heavy.
Mhm.
They're basically not meant for the person who's in them to be maneuvering themselves. They require almost because of their girth and bulk, like someone to be pushing you, which is like, okay, so now in addition, you're 17 and you are like, can't do what you want, which is basically what every 17-year-old wants.
Yeah. Exactly, it was a great time.
It was
Um,
fantastic, fabulous, lovely.
yeah.
Wow.
And so throughout that,
God.
I did some more testing through, MD Anderson,
Mm,
because they want to figure out what was going on, and they did some skin biopsies, and they found that one, I never had CRPS in the first place, or two, that the CRPS developed itself into small fiber neuropathy. At
wow.
that time, they told me that it's basically like my nerves were just attacking each other and they're damaged and dying off, and that was causing my nerve pain.
Yeah.
And then also diagnosed with dysautonomia,
Mm.
neurocardiogenic syncope. It's this huge long ass name
Can
I
you tell
can't pronounce.
people what that is? In,
It's similar to POTS. A lot of people have POTS.
yeah.
Um, and for me, the neurocardiogenic, my blood pressure goes up and down a lot, so I just kind of manage it.
Mm,
So I've never fully passed out, knock on wood, um, but I've been able to manage it since then. And so the mobility issue is completely different than the dysautonomia that I
yeah.
have. And so
Yeah.
people try to correlate the two. And for me, it's been different. Some
Yeah.
people, it's the same thing, but for me, it's been different. And
Distinct
so,
things.
yeah.
Right. Hmm.
And so I'm trying to grasp all everything else going on. Um, and I felt, and also at this point, the relationship with my father was never really there.
Yeah.
He I kind of go in more a little bit. Um, I developed a addiction to opioids and painkillers, and to the point where I just start sneaking them because like those little pill boxes, like the different days, so you can
Yeah.
take your pills on each day.
Yeah.
Um, my mom would have to fill them out because I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I was so drugged up.
Right.
And so I would just keep sneaking in the painkillers that I had. And looking back, they weren't working for me at all physically. It was just the psychological addiction that I
Right.
need them,
Hmm.
that they're helping, but in reality, they're not doing anything.
Hmm.
And so one night, I had set my alarm for 2:22 a.m. Don't know why 2:22 a.m., but I did. And it was going through my head like, okay, this is it. I'm not going to be this burden. This is it. I'm going to throw in the towel. I've done what I can, and this is the card I'm dealt with, and I don't want to deal with it. So I gotten up. At this point, my mom had already hidden all prescription bottles because she kind of had an idea what was going on.
Hmm.
And so I was able to kind of like sneak into like our little medicine cabinet, like a Walgreens,
Hmm.
what we called it, and I found a random prescription bottle, I think of Tramadol or something that was not supposed to mix with the current prescriptions that I had.
Right.
And so I went back to my room. I don't know how many pills are in there, but I pretty much took the entire bottle at that point.
Hmm.
And then once I was done, I went back to bed
Hmm.
and tried to go back to sleep. And then within about 30 seconds of me trying to fall back to sleep after I just downed this entire bottle of pills, thinking, okay, this is the last time I'm going to go back to sleep. And I think, what the fuck did I just do?
God.
I had that realization of like, what am I doing? Did I really just do that? And I think what was more scary for me was having to admit that to my mom, who has done everything she could for me, taken every doctor's appointment, who has led me through everything. And I had to go wake her up at 3 o'clock in the morning and tell her, like, Mom, I just did something really dumb.
Mm.
And she knew immediately what I had done. And she gets up and calls poison control, and poison control is also freaking out. At this point, my father is also sleeping in another bedroom. So we
Mm.
woke him up, and he got up and he laughed and went back to bed. Yeah. And so my mom and I, we go to the ER, and I could just feel my throat getting a little cold and getting a little shaky. I'm thinking, oh shit, like this is not what I'm meant for. This is not how it's gonna end.
Mhm.
Um, and so
But
they
I
had,
also get it, right? Like, I was thinking about like, I also get it when you're just, like, so fucking tired because every fucking day is such effort. You're just like, "I don't want to have that. I don't want that. I don't wanna do this effort anymore." It's
mhm,
like, I can't do it. I don't have it. I just don't have it in me. And
it's like the
then
same shit, same day. And
same
then
shit every day. Like, it just gets so dark and so small, you know? It's like, that's yeah, I can identify with that.
yeah,
So,
and they talk about like suicide and that kind of stuff as it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
yeah,
In my mind, it was a permanent solution to a permanent problem.
yeah.
And so I thought, oh, well, it cancels out. It's fine.
Yeah. I remember when I was, I think, so I'd quit using, I was maybe like, I quit using when I was 20. I was maybe 21. And I remember someone telling me, Case, you will one day live your life without suicide as an option. And I was just like I was willing to believe that, I could stay clean and I could stay sober. Like, I was willing to believe that I could like leave that life behind, but this idea of like never of like being relieved of wanting to kill myself, I had lived with it for such a long time since it's one of the first things I remember as a small kid. And this idea that I would live a life where that is not in my reference points felt so impossible. And then, so I'm much older now, I'm 42, but it's easily been like, I think probably 18 years since I have felt like that ghost or that specter,
Mhm.
that darkness of being like, oh, well, there's always that, you know?
Yeah.
So you're at the hospital and you're like, I have done something that I wish I had not done, but what's
Mhm.
going to happen now?
Yeah. So, I mean, you go in the hospital and you say, oh, you just down pills, they're automatically going to think, okay, we're going to lock you up in a psych ward. And so I'm like, no, so I made an excuse of, no, I just really couldn't sleep. So I didn't know what I was doing. And I look at my mom, like, Mom, back me up here. And mom was like, you son of a bitch. And so, I mean, I think she understood that I understood what was going on. And
Yeah.
that was my rock bottom. And when
Mm,
you hit rock bottom, that's the bottom. Like the only way it can go is up.
right.
Um, and so I ended up just drinking shit, liquid charcoal.
Yeah.
It was so gross.
Throwing up.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I felt so sick for the entire day. And so we get back around like 7 or 8 in the morning. And so I just spent pretty much the entire day in bed. And I remember my dad walked in, looked at me, laughed again, and walked out. And so throughout, and then after that, I just remember thinking like, okay, now I don't have to live with that what if. Like I know what that feels like, and I don't want to do that again. And that's not how it's going to end.
Profound.
Yeah.
That is some real, like, fucking crystalline, super clear shit where you're like, okay, because they're very, that's not always what happens, right?
Hmm. Exactly.
Wow.
But yeah. And so within actually a few weeks after that, I found wheelchair basketball on YouTube, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I found game film from the 2012 London Paralympics, and I watched these players who would be my future teammates. I'm thinking,
Oh, so what
yeah,
year is this? Wait, what year is this? So,
2013.
fuck.
Yep. And I'm thinking, oh shit, their arms are jacked. Like I want to do that. Like if I'm not gonna be able to play center ball, then I want to try that.
I mean, there. you guys are massive. Like, so I'm a swimmer and I'm used to like, I was a swimmer, right?
Mhm.
Olympian, broad shoulders, and you're big. And I'm just like, whoa, these chicks are so jacked. Their arms are like bigger than my head. It's so cool. It's so cool. Okay, so you're 2013. How old are you? You're like,
I'm still 17 at that
okay,
time.
you're
And so
17. You're like, these guys. What the hell's happening over there? What happens?
and so I'm thinking, oh, that shit is just awesome. And my mom was like, oh God, here we go. And so but also at that time, I was also thinking, do I want to try this? Because that's also me accepting my fate is that I'm going to be in a wheelchair
Right.
for a long time, or am I just going to push that aside and focus on try to get back on 2 feet?
Right.
And so I think from everything that was going on, I was like, okay, I need to try that.
Right.
So my father's also military,
Right.
Marine
Huh.
Corps, and so we had access to Fort Sam in San Antonio, Texas.
Right.
And so I got to go try it out, the sport for the first time with guys. I had just come back from overseas that had just acquired their disability, whether they were blown up overseas, they lost a leg, 2 legs, an arm, eye. And so these guys are like twice my size, like twice, 3 times my age. And I come in as this white, scrawny 17-year-old, not knowing what I'm doing, and
Wait.
try it for the first time.
So hold on. Let me paint the picture. So you basically got like some really like the best of the best trained bodies, Marine Corps, right? Coming back, having to navigate their own kind of outrage, rage, deep depressions around having acquired their own disability. And they're like, I'm going to do wheelchair basketball. So that's like
Mhm.
who's on the court, and you at 17
I can
show
like, hey
up,
guys, let's
oh,
go.
in the middle of that. Okay. So
Yeah,
what happens? Did you guys just like brawl it out like maniacs?
the guys were super awesome. And so we were all learning the sport for the first time.
Right.
And so one of the recreational therapists that was there was also affiliated with organization in San Antonio, the San Antonio Spurs wheelchair basketball team.
Right.
And we exchanged numbers through that. And then with a few weeks, I went to go watch a basketball practice.
Yeah.
They're now called San Antonio Parasport Spurs.
Yeah.
So I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And the team was made up of mostly veterans.
Yeah.
And so they got me known chair, and I was on the roster and played for the first season and traveled with them. And so they became like my brothers, and they're the ones that really taught me the game.
Oh, okay. So let's talk, because you're basically training with guys.
Hmm.
Let's talk about Murder Ball, the documentary. When did you come across that documentary?
I came across the documentary actually right before I found wheelchair basketball.
Right.
I was like, Mom, you gotta watch this. Like, this is awesome. Um, and so she's like, you are not doing that. That is way too much contact. Like,
And
you
you're
do
like,
you see the size of the
I'm
arm?
17. Call them up.
I was like,
Hello, I'd
Mom,
like
it's
to play.
fine. I can do it.
That's awesome. Okay, so what kind of chair did you get to start off with?
So they at the time they had a program chair. It's kind of like a basic basketball wheelchair.
Yeah.
And so I used that. They let me borrow it for about a year
Yeah.
until about a few weeks after I started playing for the Spurs. I got contacted by the University of Texas at Arlington,
Right.
and they had just started their first year of the women's team
Right.
there. And they have a men's program that has won multiple national championships since like the 80s.
Totally.
And so up here, I'm currently in Fort Worth now. Um, there's a company called Performax Wheelchairs that
Yeah.
make custom wheelchairs for basketball, CrossFit, tennis, and day chairs.
Yeah.
And so they have been so awesome since day one. And I was able to get my first chair through them and also through a grant called the Challenge Athletes Foundation.
Yeah.
They grant like thousands of athletes with different physical disabilities, whether it's a child grant, equipment grant, or whatever you need. And so I was able to get my first chair through that.
Right.
And so played the Spurs my senior year, and then come January, I signed to go play letter of intent to UT Arlington.
Right.
And so I played at UT Arlington. Coming up in that summer of my freshman year, I also found out that my father, this is also where my father plays in, he's also an airline pilot. And he had a different life outside of what we knew
Yeah.
for multiple years. so
Yeah.
he's never in the picture.
Right.
And so at that time, my mom was also dealing with all of that and having to move out of our house that we grew up in to
Yeah.
now from Alabama to now my mom remarried, is now in Georgia.
Yeah.
Um, and so dealing with that also, that's also when I was starting to accept the fact that I'm gay.
Oh my God, you're gay, which is amazing, but oh, mind
Um,
blown, terrible.
yeah. And when I came up to UT Arlington for the summer before my freshman year started, we had a summer camp, and one of the coaches came up to me from another college and was like, "Hey, um, we have a development camp coming up in January or October in 2014 at this time." He's like, "Well, if we pay for your flight, will you come out?" I'm
Uh,
thinking, "Development for what?" He's like, "Oh, I'm an assistant coach for the USA team."
okay,
I'm
all right,
thinking,
let's
"What?"
just pause there. Okay, so you have played for the Spurs, just like casual word, don't even worry about it.
Mhm.
You are now at UT Arlington playing, and now you're approached by the chair of the US basketball team. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
But even really before we started our college season, and so I was like, "Yeah, sure, okay." And then, what the fuck? And then, so I started my freshman year. Obviously, I'm still learning the game. It's only been a year since I've been playing,
right,
and it's like this whole new world to me. And I go to the development camp, and I went just for experience. I didn't know anybody, um, and kind of dip my toe in the water and see what the coaches want, see how this whole thing goes, what the
yep,
sport's about, people are about. And I get a letter from our head coach, Stephanie Wheeler, who's also an ambassador for Athlete Ally.
yep,
And she sent me a formal invite to try out for the 2015 team.
right.
And I almost emailed her. I was like, "Hi, I am so sorry. I think you got the wrong Abby. But thanks so much.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, but I think you got the wrong person." Luckily, I didn't send that, thank God.
No.
And then, so I went to my first tryout in 2015 in the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Colorado
What
Springs.
was that like? Were you
That was
so at this point, are you now playing with up against chicks that you've seen only in video?
Yep.
Ah!
I was like, "Oh, you look familiar. You look familiar. What's your name again?" Like, and they had no idea who I was. Besides, a few of my UTA teammates had also went to these tryouts, and so
Right.
I'm thinking, "What am I doing?"
Oh my God.
And
So
so,
are you
like, I'm
feeling
still
like a
learning
fraud? Are you feeling like a fraud a little bit? Or are you just
a
kind
little
of
bit.
like, okay, all
And
right.
so I'm
Or is
like,
it
"Oh,
more like I can't like, whoa, like I was all about like, like accepting this new life and adjusting to it and but I the Olympic team was not in the picture. This is like it was it more
yeah."
just
I
kind of
never
like
thought
what
of
the
that
hell is
at all,
happening?
like at all. And so, like, my perspective was I was just gonna go and get experience because everybody is gonna get cut their first time. Like, that's just how it goes. You go in, you learn from the veterans. That's just what I was told. So I'm like, okay, I'll just have fun. Let me go to the gift shop. I'll buy some USA stuff. I'll look cool, post online. And so I remember sitting the last day of tryouts, we're sitting in a circle. I mean, our tryouts are like 3 to 4 days long. We go about 9 to 10 hours a day.
Right.
It
So
was
talk to me about practice. So what's like a practice for you? So this is where we are going to start talking like a little bit more nitty gritty about like the technicalities of sports. Like, cause I got to talk with one of my friends, Gary Hall Jr., who's like a 3-time Olympian, multiple gold medals. He was a sprinter and a swimmer as well. We went to the Olympics together in 96. And one of the things that I think is important for people to understand is like what it actually means to be playing at the level that you're playing at. And I think sometimes the best way to talk about that is like, okay, day in the life of like what training camp means. So for
Mhm.
swimmers, it meant training, like you're in the water 3 times a day, and then you've got an hour and a half of weights and then an hour of cross training. So you're basically in the water for like 8 hours and then you're lifting. I was just like, so it's insane,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Okay, so tell me what happens for you.
So at this training camp, um, honestly, all the little details are kind of a blur. I
Yeah,
was just like, wow, this is just so cool. But we went like 3 days, about 3 hours each,
right.
4 days. I mean, you go from individual skills to like one-on-one shot, a lot of shadow drills, ball handling drills, shooting drills, and then as like a collective. And so I was exhausted. You get blisters on your hands from high altitude, and living in Texas, I'm like used to high altitude, so going there is like a huge adjustment.
Yeah, totally.
And
'Cause
then
there's less, a lot of people don't know what that is. So there's less oxygen at high altitude. So oftentimes training camps happen at high altitude so that our hemoglobin and red blood cells can become bigger, so that when we're at competition level, we just have like all of this extra stuff happening in our body that makes it easier for us, or kind of, we're ready for the big competition. Okay, so you're up there, you're fucking exhausted.
yeah, I was dying. And obviously, I'm not used to that level of training, only coming off a year. And for college at the time, we practiced about 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Uh, and so I remember the last day. So they call up the roster, initial roster. They cut it down to like 18, I think.
Yeah.
And we're all sitting in a big circle, and the coach just reads out the list. And if you get cut, you go down the other side of the court. If you made it, you stay and you have a little talk. And I remember, I don't know why I was nervous, because I just had this feeling I was going to get cut. And I remember having my head down and I hear my last name, Dunkin. And thinking, what? And I remember after that whole thing, everybody's eyes just got huge. Like, really? I'm like, no, like this is my first time. Like I'm supposed to like, this isn't it. And so that was our first cut and second cut. I mean, I made the final roster, and that was
Yeah, you did.
yeah, I did. And so
You did.
it was a surreal experience. And
So that was in 2015, right?
Mhm.
And then 2016 Paralympics.
Yeah, I remember thinking, one, I just started. Two, there's no way after just a year and a half, 2 years of playing that I want to go to my first Paralympic Games.
But you did.
I did.
Gold, not just did, gold medal.
hmm
Let's just let that sink in. That's crazy and awesome and amazing.
And so going into the 2016 games, I mean, I'm coming in as a rookie. Like as a rookie, we had to learn our place. Like when we get
Yep.
playing time, we got to learn from the bench. Just soak. First games is when you soak everything in.
Yep.
And from the crowd in the stands to the village life and everything, like you soak it in. And so that was one of the big moments for me. And it was so remarkable. And I think when we got to the gold medal game, I knew I wasn't going to get playing time. I knew my role in the team
Yeah.
at that point. And so seeing our flag a little higher than everybody else's and hearing our anthem was huge. And we all
So
had
massive.
tears, and
Oh my God.
it was really awesome.
Okay, so that's 2016.
hmm
Last year, though, you got a bunch of playing time, because now you're not a rookie anymore.
Yep.
So I just am going to take a second here, just because I've obsessively found all footage of you. And so I know. So I'm just going to do this. And hold on a second. I have to do this. I have to share the screen. We're going to share this screen. We're going to share it. It's happening right now. That's not what I want. What's happening? That's what I want. Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah, I can.
Do you see that? That's you. Okay. So
Uh-huh.
were you always point?
Yeah, pass shooter. Just get rid of the.
Yeah, I was actually working point guard for the first time last
You
year.
were? Okay.
Mhm.
Hold on a second. Let me see if it's not, is it not going to play because it won't do our volume and the other, that's not right. What's happening with my computer? There we go. Let's try it one more time. Let's try it. It's not going to let me play it, Abby. Okay, I'm going to hook it up to the end of the, I'll put it onto the, there we go. That's us. Hold on. No. Okay, cool. Man, I had it all geared up. You do an awesome pass. So you've always been a point. So can you talk about positions in basketball, and then also the different classifications that make wheelchair basketball a little bit different than, two
Yeah,
leg
for sure.
basketball?
So I actually just started playing point guard last year.
Okay.
For the first time. So with wheelchair basketball, we have a different classification, and depending on how much function you have or your disability.
That's
So
right.
it ranges from a 1.0 to a 4.5, and it goes up in 0.5 increments.
Right.
So like somebody that is a 1.0 could be like a high paraplegic with no trunk function.
Yep.
with their legs, and they can't rotate and they can't bend down without assistance and come
Right.
back up. And a 4.5 is like somebody that has like 2 ACL tears
Right.
and can still walk.
Got it.
So you don't need technically you don't need to be in a wheelchair or use a wheelchair to get around to play wheelchair basketball.
Right.
So
Well,
you're allowed 14 points on the court
at one time.
at one time. So
Okay.
you can be strategic about it.
Okay. And so what I love about wheelchair basketball that I don't love about, what would you call the other basketball? Two-legged basketball?
Stand-up ball.
What is it?
Stand-up basketball.
Stand-up basketball. Okay.
Mhm.
So stand-up basketball is that wheelchair basketball, because of those points limitations, make it so that it's actually a team sport.
Exactly. So it's
So
to
it
prevent
privileges the team rather than the individual, which I can kind of sometimes get tired in stand-up basketball because I'm like, I'm tired of seeing the same plays, be the same person, doing the same thing over and like it just feels so I get it, you know, I'm French and I understand that there, you know, part of it is this American kind of excitement with like the individual and ego and like fancy shit. But what I love about wheelchair basketball is it privileges the whole team. I mean, of course, there are awesome individuals in it, which is why I'm interviewing you. But it's like, you know, it privileges this point distribution privileges that the team work as a unit truly in a way that stand-up basketball does not have to.
Yeah, and it's also to prevent like those higher point players of 4.5. So you can't have like 4.5 players out there who have the most ability and
That's right.
Project Solace out there to a team that's all 1.0s.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so personally, I'm a 3.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have to be pretty good, decent at math, and so we have different lineups, and so like you can have like your main lineup, it can equal 14 points or lower.
Yeah.
And then you have to match different numbers to whoever you want to play.
Right. Okay. So now we're gonna get to 2020. When did you find out that they were getting postponed?
I actually found out. So I have a friend who works at a news station in Kentucky who I just did an interview with like an hour prior about the possibility of it being postponed. And then he texted me and said, "Hey, games got postponed." I was like, "What? No, they haven't." I'm like, "I haven't heard anything." He's like, "Yeah, I just found it on Twitter." And I was like, "What?" And then find out on Twitter that I got postponed. And so at first, I'm thinking, shit, like we worked all these years. We have athletes that were planning to retire after this year that already made post-life commitments. So are we going to get those players back? What's going to happen next year? What's going to happen with the financial aspect of it? And so, but as this whole pandemic has played out and looking now, the IOC, the IPC have definitely made the best decision to postpone it.
Right.
And I know I was on a call with 300 other Olympians and Paralympians a few nights before, trying to get everybody's views. And everybody was really mixed about it. Just coming from an economical standpoint and a training standpoint, you have to make sure you hit your peak at that certain time.
Right, because that's the other thing that Gary and I were talking about is it's like you've been it's not like you've been training for this and you have to time it so that you do hit your peak and so you guys have been training this whole year to hit your peak in end of July, August into September, and it's like now you have to do it for one more year. Is that sustainable?
For me personally, it is. We have had one athlete that has decided to retire early because of the postponement. And she's been a veteran since the early thousands. She's been kind of a backbone of her team. And so I give her props. I don't blame her at all for taking time for family and work. So she made the best decision for her. And so for us, that means we have to adjust
Right.
and get ready for this next year.
Roster has to change.
Figure out
So,
what's the schedule is going to be like for the rest of this year and payments. And
right.
so we're still figuring a lot out.
And so what does this mean like if you had something to say to other Olympians and Paralympians, like what would you tell them as like a encouragement or reality check or something, like, because I mean I imagine that you guys are all feeling it because
Hmm.
I don't know, like I got sat down at 12 and was like, so you're going to be going to the Olympics in 1992, then you're going to do 96, and at 96 this is how you're going to perform, and then in 2000 this is when you're going to break the records, and then these are all the competitions leading up to that. Like it gets broken down in a really
It's
specific,
very structured.
very structured, right?
Mhm.
And now you don't have like one of the big games. So
Mhm.
that makes sense that there's confusion about like, oh, well, what is the next, what does the rest of the playing season look like once we get, on the other side of social distancing with the pandemic, right?
Mhm. And so
Yeah.
like we had international trips scheduled for the summer. We had training
Yeah.
camps, and now we don't know. I mean, obviously all of our international travel got canceled,
Yeah.
and we don't know when we're gonna see our team again. We don't know when our next training camp's gonna be.
Yeah.
We don't know if we're gonna have to be training starting like September through the winter and then start
Right.
up again in January.
Right.
So everything's kind of up in the air right now.
Yeah. So I guess we can wrap up now. I mean, although I feel like we could like chat forever. What are you doing to stay in shape right now?
A lot of at-home workouts.
Yeah.
And so actually within the past year or two, I've changed my diet to plant-based.
Yeah.
And so that's helped with not only with my chronic stuff,
Right.
how I play on the court.
Right.
And so I'm able to walk now with a small brace on my foot that
Yeah,
I
I
can
saw that.
my shoe. Yeah,
Yeah.
it comes in handy.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of at-home workouts. I just had to order a ton of, well, not a ton. My bank account thinks it's a ton. Fitness equipment that's really hard to get right now.
Right.
Start building kind of my home gym a little bit.
Okay, cool.
So just a lot of kind of self-quarantining workouts, and yeah.
Right. And how long are you working out every day? I'm always curious, like, is it like a couple hours or is it just,
Yeah, for me right now ranges from an hour to an hour and a half.
yeah, right.
Hmm.
Cool.
Fun
All
stuff.
right. Abby, it was so cool to finally get to connect with you in real time. Thanks so much for spending time with me and kind of chatting about this. I'm so sorry that the Olympics got postponed for you and your team, but I'm really glad that there's a chance that we'll see you play next year, which is cool.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I'm gonna stop recording and then you and I can have like a proper goodbye.
Okay.
So thanks again.